Hey, what's up, everyone? It's Jenny Dildine, the LDS Mission Coach, and you are listening to the LDS Mission Podcast, episode number 175, More on Anxiety and Fear. I'm Jenny, the LDS Mission Coach, and whether you're preparing to serve a mission, currently serving, a returned missionary, or a missionary mama like me, I created this podcast just for you. Are you searching for epic confidence, ready to love yourself and to learn the how of doing hard things? Then let's go. You totally already have what it takes to step powerfully into your potential and never question your purpose again. It's time to embrace yourself, embrace your mission, embrace your life, and embrace what's next. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to be hanging out with you today. If you are like me and the rest of the world, we are headed into the last week of October and just kind of taking in what it is that October has to offer. Last night, we had some temperatures dip below freezing for the first time. So here we come, winter right after fall. We also have Halloween coming up, which typically brings up a lot of memories for me of lots of Halloweens of just crazily and chaotically getting costumes for all 5 of my children. And I think sometimes even Halloween, again, I've talked to you guys about how I'm learning to love fall. And I think one of the reasons that I haven't loved fall is because of how chaotic it's been around fall, Thanksgiving, all of that fun stuff. When you think about having 5 kids and, looking back on it, it's now, of course, like the funnest memories. We were looking at some pictures of all 5 of my kids when they were little. So actually this picture was when just 4 of them were born, and we did kind of a theme for Halloween. We did Peter Pan, and my oldest son was Captain Hook, and then my second son was Peter Pan, and then it was so cute. My third son was Mr. Smee, who's probably only like 5 years old, 4 years old, something like that. And then my daughter, my first daughter, I was just so thrilled to have a girl. She was Tinkerbell, and it was the cutest ever. So we've always kind of been into more of that lighthearted Halloween vibe. 1 year my daughter was Dorothy, 1 year another daughter was a mime. My boys, as they got into their teenage years, kind of liked doing things that were a little bit scary, but nothing like too crazy. I was talking to a friend this week, and she said, "Oh, our family's into the gory horror Halloween stuff." Let me say that correctly. And she's like, "I'm pretty sure my daughter's going to be Chucky, except a girl version." And so their family's totally into all of that stuff and the fear. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is this fear that can sometimes escalate into anxiety. And one of the reasons that this is on my mind right now, of course, is just because we have Halloween coming up, which is just such a good reminder to me. And I hope it's a reminder to you that, listen, the emotion we feel is not right or wrong or bad or good. It's just emotion. And in fact, at Halloween, we seek out fear. Many of us, more than sometimes, like this friend I was talking to, they like more of the fear. And maybe you're the type that likes to go to the haunted corn mazes and all of that. And, really like watch the scary movies and bring up all of that fear. And maybe you're more like me and you like just a little bit of fear, but not too much fear. But the emotion of fear or anxiety all by itself is not bad or wrong. In fact, we seek it out from time to time. And if it was wrong or bad to feel fear, we wouldn't have Halloween. We wouldn't have movies that kind of evoke that feeling inside of us. And if we're thinking about it, it doesn't even have to be a gory movie. Like I was just thinking about Top Gun Maverick, where we're watching that and we're like, oh, are they going to do the thing that we want them to do? Or a Marvel movie. And that sort of like anticipation or fear or even sometimes a little bit of anxiety that you feel when you're watching something is not bad. So all of that has been on my mind, along with this email, or actually, I think it was a message that I got on Instagram. And I'm going to read it to you. I left out all the names, all of the references, but this has been on my mind and something I definitely want to speak to. So she says, this mom, what is your advice or experience on how to talk to leaders about anxiety? My son hasn't talked to his stake president about his anxiety. I think mostly since he's getting help from a therapist, awesome, and the stake president isn't really trained to help with that. Right. So I can see how, we're going to talk all about this, but I can see how we're just like, well, I'm seeing a therapist, and so I don't really need to bring this up with my stake president. This mom said, anyway, I'm not sure how the stake president or mission president, how they will both respond. I know there are lots of missionaries struggling with the same thing and seem to get support. Then she says, I'm afraid he'll express what he's been experiencing, and the leaders will say, you're good. You don't have to serve a mission. Anyway, of course, I'm praying for someone to see his goodness and amazing capabilities and offer support, but I know leaders are also overwhelmed and busy. Anyway, she says, I'm feeling anxiety about him being honest about his new anxiety. Do you have any suggestions on how to approach a leader? And what I told here, okay, so here's a couple of things. I think it's so interesting that this mom is afraid of her son's anxiety, which is normal, I think. But also because of what she's afraid the repercussions will be if her son admits that he's experiencing anxiety. And so I want to talk about today this fear, this anxiety, why it's not a problem, and some of the things that we're doing incorrectly or not thinking about or talking about in a useful way that actually is doing maybe more harm than helping a lot of our missionaries, our friends who are experiencing anxiety. So here's the truth. I actually, over the last probably 3 weeks, I have felt a subtle sort of like churning of anxiety, just like deep kind of in my stomach. It kind of rises up into my chest a little bit. And I don't know exactly why. I don't know exactly what the thoughts are creating the anxiety, but I can just feel it kind of coursing through my body over the last couple weeks. And what I want to tell you is that it's okay to feel anxiety. Now, this question is totally valid because this mom has concerns, first of all, about her son's anxiety. And second of all, though, I think what I want to speak to today is the idea that leaders or mission presidents or stake presidents fear anxiety as well. And it's just not necessary. And it's actually doing a disservice to people just understanding that their emotions are fine and that their emotions are okay. The other thing I've been feeling a lot of lately is self-doubt. That one I feel a little bit higher in my chest, like right below my sternum, and it feels like a hole like that goes whoosh right through the back of my chest. And that has also been hanging out in my body the last couple weeks. Now, I've done some work on this over the last long while. When I say work, I mean like I've done coaching, I've done prayer, I've done some deeper emotional processing stuff just to kind of address or at least kind of figure out what this anxiety is and how to let it move through my body and then just be okay. Not with the expectation that I'm never going to feel anxiety again. but just with the expectation that I can help myself be okay with what I'm feeling and surrender to it more and still create the life that I want to create. So during some of this work, what I realized is that I'm actually somewhat afraid of myself. I'm afraid that my anxiety or self-doubt is going to sabotage who I want to be. Which is interesting, right? Because this mom is also afraid that her son's anxiety and self-doubt is going to sabotage what he's going to be. And then we take that one step further to the mission president and the stake president, who may also think that anxiety and self-doubt and this fear is going to sabotage what this kid can do. And none of that has to be true. You don't have to be afraid of yourself. So I want to talk about this today because sometimes, and I talked a little bit about this with shame in a couple episodes ago, we don't have to be afraid of the emotion of anxiety. We don't have to be afraid of the fear that we feel from time to time or self-doubt. Now, I do think that there is a continuum, and I do think that there's, a little bit of like intrepidation, maybe would be a little bit of like the first emotion that we might feel. Then we might feel a little bit of like insecurity. Then we might feel self-doubt. Then we might feel fear. Then we might feel overwhelmed. Then that overwhelm might lead to anxiety. And then anxiety often, when not processed, when we think anxiety is wrong, when we think we shouldn't feel anxiety, and when we resist anxiety, it turns into panic. And then sometimes to terror, right? Doesn't that sound like a terrible emotion to feel? Terror? Oh, yeah. But some people like it. Halloween. So there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, this is how these emotions can escalate when we're afraid of them. Okay, so I was thinking about the new youth theme that is for 2025, and it's Doctrine and Covenants 636. Look unto me in every thought, doubt not, fear not. And so I think we hear stuff like this and we're like, oh no, shouldn't doubt, shouldn't fear, shouldn't have anxiety. If I do, then for sure something's wrong. But nothing's wrong. You're a human with human emotions. And especially when you think about going on a mission, you guys, or coming home from a mission, it's the most like discombobulating thing that you could probably do in your entire lifetime. Besides maybe getting married and having a baby. Okay. Like the most crazy. And then of course I didn't include anything that would be challenging, like a divorce or things like that. But there are, of course, things that are very dysregulating that cause us to feel like our lives are getting turned upside down. And so it's no wonder that our bodies and our brains are like, this is a problem. And then we feel fear. Or I'm a problem. And now I feel self-doubt. Okay. But it's not useful for people to see that a person experiencing self-doubt or anxiety is a problem. What we need to do more of is just like, oh my gosh, yeah, totally. You totally feel anxious. That's okay. Of course, that makes sense. This is really like a crazy situation we put you in. It's totally unlike anything you've ever done before. Or of course, you feel a little anxious, a little social anxiety as you're coming home from your mission. Like everything's different. You're different. It makes sense that you feel this way. So there's 3 things that I want to kind of put out there is number 1, anxiety or any other emotion is not an illness. Anxiety, in most cases, is an emotion that we feel. And sometimes We could say there's an anxiety disorder that someone has where they have a tendency to feel more anxiety and more anxiety and more anxiety. But we shouldn't be treating it when we're talking to people as if it's something that prevents them from showing up in their lives, as if they've all of a sudden been paralyzed from the neck down, or like that they can't function anymore in their lives, or they can't serve a mission, or they can't all the things, right? We should be talking to people like, oh, yeah, of course, that makes sense. You experience anxiety from time to time. That's okay. I bet you'll work through it. How can we help you work through it? Number 2, we have to get better at normalizing emotion. I just fear that we live in this world. Here I am with fear, but it seems to me, even if I'm not afraid of it, it seems to me we live in this world where we're afraid of feeling, and we think feeling certain emotions is wrong or bad. And we need to stop that, especially if we're in a leadership position. We need to stop saying, like, this is a problem. Nope, maybe you shouldn't go on your mission. We need to see people like this mom was hoping. She said she was praying for someone to see his goodness and his amazing capabilities. And he's experiencing some anxiety and needs support. People need support. Okay? And we can totally normalize that. We can create safer places to feel emotion. I've actually talked to parents of missionaries who are afraid to tell their mission president that they're experiencing a certain emotion, or they're afraid to tell their mission president that they're thinking about going home and having all kinds of self-doubt, because they're worried that if they tell the mission leader that the mission leader will be like, well, okay, see the counselor. And if you don't get rid of this anxiety, you probably might go home. Right? We don't want people afraid of their fear. We don't want people afraid of their anxiety. It makes the problem worse, not better. We want leaders and friends and support groups where we can be like, yeah, of course you feel this way. It makes sense. How can we help? How can we support you? Here's the truth. The most successful people feel all kinds of challenging emotions like I have the last couple weeks, and they know how to keep going. When we see anxiety and fear and self-doubt as an illness, then it's almost like we give up. We lay down and we stop moving forward in our lives. And instead, we can just keep going. So the most successful people learn how to feel, how to accept what they're feeling, to not see themselves as the problem, to create a safe space for other people, but also for yourself to feel anxiety. And I get the sense that our teens and young adults are wanting to do this. They want to feel seen and accepted, and they want to share how they're feeling, but they're afraid. They're afraid that we're afraid as adults and as leaders. And we can just stop that altogether. We don't need to be afraid. So we can be just teaching people what to do with their emotions. Like, how do we help you? How do we support you? Not that they shouldn't have them. And not that having a certain emotion or feeling a certain emotion makes them bad or makes them incapable or disqualifies them for the kind of service that they want to do. We should create more spaces where it's safe to feel emotion, where we won't be judged and where we won't be seen as a liability or as a problem. I was talking to a missionary this week on a strategy call, and he was saying what I usually hear from missionaries, right, is I just feel unmotivated all the time. And what I said was, yep, said, I feel self-doubt all the time. I was like, yeah, totally. And he said, I feel anxious all the time. And I was like, yeah, makes sense. You've only been out there a few months. Makes sense. You're super anxious. Right? I'm not all of a sudden like, oh my gosh, bring in I don't know, the rescue team. Somebody help. The house is burning down, right? Whatever sort of reaction we're used to having where we add so much fear to just experiences that people have. I told him it's normal for him to feel this way, especially given the situation that he's in. So here's the other thing I want to talk about, because I've kind of been noticing this a little bit with my daughter. And one of the ways that we can kind of help with the solution to this is, so sometimes she feels a little anxious or a lot of self-doubt or a lot of, insecurity, fear before she goes to mutual, sometimes before she goes to school, middle school, right? Obviously, that makes so much sense that people feel that way, obviously, because middle school is tough. It's hard. And the kids are not nice half the time, right? And so it's just a tough thing to be in, a tough situation to be in. And so she has these emotions moving through her body all the time. And so whatever it was, there was a temple trip this week. And she's like, Mom, I just don't think I can go. I'm not up for it. I'm feeling anxious about it. I'm feeling worried about it. And then what she said to me, and so we talked through it. I'm like, well, it could be good for you to sort of push yourself and go so that you can sort of work through this anxiety and show your brain like you can still show up even though you're feeling what you want to feel. And I said, or you don't have to go and you can just be kind to yourself while you're feeling this anxious feeling and allow yourself to just have it. And she said, I mean, after a couple days of conversation, actually, she just finally decided, she's like, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can go. And, you know, as a leader and as a parent, we have to be really kind of careful about this, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, about when to really push someone and to kind of encourage them to move through the anxiety and when to encourage them to take care of themselves and be mindful of what they're feeling and how to sort of take care of themselves. And what I'm trying to do more and more with my kids is just be able to teach them how to know the difference about when they're up to sort of like push themselves and when they just really do need to take a step back and take care of themselves. And so after all of that was said and done, she basically was like, I don't think I can go. And I was like, okay, that's totally fine. Then she kind of wanted to, you know, numb her feelings a little bit because I think she felt embarrassed and she felt frustrated with herself. And so she was like, oh, I'm just going to get on my phone or whatever. She actually doesn't have a phone, just her iPad. And I said, actually, I think you should just feel these feelings. It does feel uncomfortable, but you can just feel these feelings and really take care of yourself and not numb away from these feelings. And one of the part of our conversation, she said, what am I going to tell my leaders and my friends when they ask why I wasn't there? And she wanted an excuse of why she was feeling the way she was feeling, not why she was feeling the way she was feeling, actually just wanted an excuse to cover up the emotion she was feeling. Like, how many times do we do this, you guys? We're just like, oh, I just have other plans, or I just can't make it, or I, had something come up, and we're not honest about how we're feeling. And I think the more of us who are honest about how we're feeling, the more of us will stop being afraid of our fear and afraid of our anxiety and afraid of our self-doubt. Because when no one talks about it, you feel literally like you are the only person on the planet who feels this way. But you're not. We all feel this way from time to time. And some of us might be more prone to apathy. Some of us might be more prone to anxiety. Some of us might be more prone to self-doubt or discouragement. Totally fine. But we all feel these emotions all the time. So my challenge to you is when you're interacting with your companion and when you're interacting with your mission president or your friends, whatever it is, to just tell the truth. And that's what I told my daughter. I'm like, if anybody asks, you just say, I was feeling a lot of emotions. I was actually feeling worried about the temple and what was going to happen there because I haven't gone enough to know what it's like. And I'm a little embarrassed that I feel that way. And then I'm kind of sad and mad at myself that I feel this way. But these are all the emotions I'm feeling. And to tell the truth and say, that's why I didn't go. And I'm working on learning how to feel these emotions and not to be afraid of my fear and not to be afraid of my worry. But yesterday, I couldn't. And instead, I just stayed home, felt all those feelings, and took care of myself. This is what we need to do more of, not making excuses, creating safe spaces where people can share and where we start to normalize the emotions of being human. I mean, we might as well, right? We're here on this earth being human. I think it's time that we kind of accept that and surrender to it and be okay with it. So, don't make excuses, tell the truth. I actually had an experience. So last fall and went into the winter, I had this experience where I was going to be on someone's podcast as a guest. And as I head into fall and winter, I tend to get a little bit of like a seasonal affective disorder where I do experience more anxiety, more sadness, I'm more lethargic. I'm not as motivated. I have a lot of self-doubt, stuff like that. And I was just like, I don't think I can show up on that podcast and show up the way that I want to. And so I decided instead to cancel, to take care of myself. And I reached out to the person and I just said, listen, I can't show up for that recording. And I'm sorry, but here's what's going on for me. Maybe you didn't know. And I told this person that in the email, said, maybe you didn't know, but this time of year is really hard for me. And I experience a little bit of discouragement and a little bit of anxiety and a lot of sadness. And it's hard for me to feel motivated at all. And do you know what her response was? She wasn't afraid of my fear. She wasn't afraid of my self-doubt. She wasn't like, oh, well, I guess we'll never have you on the podcast again. She was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I love that you shared that with me. Thank you for trusting me with sharing that. And she's like, thank you. And I love you. And I hope you are doing okay. Let me know if I can help. Right? That is what happens is when we're honest and we stop making fear, self-doubt a problem, an illness, something we got to fix or solve or get rid of, because we just won't. Not living in this life with these bodies and these brains, it's going to come around sometimes. Okay, so I've been on this kick listening to musicals lately, not all of them, mostly Hamilton. I've been listening to Dear Evan Hansen. When we were in London over the summer, we saw Hadestown. So I've been listening to Wicked, some of these that have like these really powerful group numbers or power ballads and stuff like that. And the one that's been on my mind recently over the last couple of weeks is the song from Dear Evan Hansen, You Will Be Found. And here's what I want to share a little bit of a piece of that. It says, have you ever felt like nobody was there? Have you ever felt forgotten in the middle of nowhere? Have you ever felt like you could disappear, like you could fall and no one would hear? And then a little bit later, it says, There's a place where we don't have to feel unknown. And every time you call out, you're a little less alone. If you only say the word, from across the silence, your voice is heard. So this takes courage. You might be afraid to reach out. You might be afraid to tell people how you're feeling. You might even see your own anxiety, your own self-doubt as an illness. It's just not. It's totally normal for you to feel the way you are feeling, and create a safe place for you to reach out. I just love this. And it also reminded me so much of the miracle where the woman reaches out to the Savior's hem of his garment, right? Like, she had to do that. And she was probably afraid and anxious and self-doubt. And so, but she still did it. Every time you call out, you're a little less alone. People don't know how you feel unless you tell them. And then when we're on the other side of that, of someone sharing something with us, let's create a useful, loving place where we can normalize that for people, where we can open up this conversation about how we feel. Fear all by itself is not bad. It's normal to think what you think and to feel what you feel. And sometimes we actually seek it out, the fear, right? Like around Halloween. So you can stop seeing yourself as a problem, you guys. You're not a problem. And if it makes sense that you don't want to talk about this with your mission president or your stake president, that's okay. I can understand why. But I think the more we talk about it, and if any mission leaders or stake presidents are listening, please create more of a space where people can tell you this stuff and we don't freak out about it. We're not afraid of people's fear or afraid of people's anxiety. Instead, we can say, I hear you. This makes sense. How can we help and support you? Okay, so I want to go back to this scripture from the Doctrine and Covenants 6:36, which is, again, the youth theme for 2025. Look unto me in every thought, doubt not, fear not. I think sometimes we think so much about this doubt not, fear not. And it's kind of what we've been talking about today, doubt and fear, anxiety. But let's not miss the beginning part of the scripture. It says, look unto me. Look unto me in every thought. And what this says to me is, when we think about our Savior, when we think about what he's done for us, when we think about who he is and the way that he died for us and the way that he atoned for our sins, this is where our courage is. Not that as normal human beings that we won't doubt or fear, because we just will. That's part of being human. That's part of existing on this earth and trying new things. Actually, most times, if you're trying something new and stepping into a new edge of growth for yourself, you're going to feel fear. Sometimes it's going to escalate into anxiety. Sometimes it's just nervousness. Sometimes it's a little unsettled. Whatever it is, that little fear is what, if you can move through it, propels you towards growth. And so we need that. But when we look unto Christ in every thought, we can cradle sort of that fear and that anxiety and the self-doubt that we have just as humans trying to make our way in the world. And we can rely on him. He is our courage, right? He, knowing what he did for us to sanctify it all, not that it's going to go away completely, but we can cradle our own self-doubt and fear, which we will just always have as humans. And when we look to him, then we don't have to doubt or fear, because he's got us every time. Our heavenly parents, they have a plan. And sometimes he'll be able to help us take the fear away that we feel as humans, and sometimes not. And that's okay, because he His plan covers all of it. So don't think of doubt not, fear not as like, oh, I'm not allowed to do that. And if I do that, people are going to think there's something wrong with me. And my leaders aren't going to see the value or the worth that I have. Instead, look at this as, let's pay attention to, look unto me in every thought, Jesus Christ. Because he's the healer. And he sanctifies our doubt, our fear, our anxiety, the self-doubt that we have. When we move through it, he can take it and make something better of it in the end for our growth and transformation. I think what I finally realized was that look unto me in every thought, doubt not, fear not, is we don't have to doubt him. We don't have to fear him. We don't have to doubt his plan or his atonement or his love for us. And we don't have to fear him or his power, because his power is for us. And so when we think, look unto me in every thought, doubt not, fear not, maybe he's just talking about himself. We might have our own fears. We might have our own doubts, but we do not have to doubt or fear him. Okay? So everyone, I hope you have the most amazing Halloween doing whatever level of fear or gory horror that you like. I will probably just be watching Wizard of Oz or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I hope you find something fun that kind of brings out a little bit of your excitement, a little bit of that fear. And I want you to take a minute to notice like that fear all by itself is not a problem, and start making space for people to feel it, for you to not think of it as like a problem or an illness, and then continue normalizing it. Because the more normal we make it to be human, the easier it is for all of us. Okay? Everyone have a great week, and we will talk to you next time. Serving a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints can present a unique set of challenges, and mindset and emotional well-being is more important than ever. So thanks for being a part of this community, where we share real-life mission stories, support each other through struggles, and keep creating the mission and post-mission experiences that we truly want. Don't forget to check out the show notes for additional resources and share this episode with someone that you think might need it. Thanks so much for being a part of my world, and know this: no matter which part of the mission experience you are involved in, Jenny, the LDS mission coach, is thinking about you every single day.